Good morning, you guys. It is a slow start to the morning here on the farm, and I'm not mad about it at all. So before I head outside and check on the garden, it is supposed to rain, so I'm trying to get some chores done out there this morning before that happens. I'm gonna be making sourdough bagels up on Nathan's request. So I am baking sourdough every single week. Typically Tuesdays are my bread days, and that might be something that I kind of share with you guys too, my bread baking routine. I'm really wanting to limit what we're buying, so I'm making not daily loaves as much. We don't actually eat that bread a lot, but I'm making focaccias, which we are using like we would a bread, and we're also using them with dinners. I make a lot of naan. I make a lot of like discard things with sourdough, but bagels have been requested, so I need to feed Otis. So Otis is my sourdough starter. He is available on our website if you've been thinking about getting into sourdough. I absolutely love baking bread. It is such a de-stressor for me. Sourdough bread's really healthy for you, so it's a better alternative than some of the bread options you can get at the store. And then there's just the versatility. There's so many different things. So we're making the focaccia every single week, the daily loaf about every week and a half. And then, like I said, discard sourdough cookies, discard naan, discard pancakes and waffles. So really none of it's gonna go to waste, but I keep him stored in the fridge if I'm not using him. And then when I get ready to bake, you need to activate Otis, which is what I'm gonna do this morning. And so I'm gonna discard about half of it, and then I'm gonna feed him with 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, sit him on the counter, and he's gonna rise all day. And then tonight, I'm gonna start that first process of adding, you know, my active starter with my flour and my water and my salt, and I'm gonna let it bulk rise overnight. So for me, I've learned the key with sourdough, because I get asked a lot of sourdough questions. It's like, I got my schedule off, I'm baking at 3 a.m. You guys, I remember that to a T. I remember when I had first started baking, I'd be up at like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning doing lifts and folds, and I'm like, there has to be a better way. So now I just feed Otis in the morning, making sure I'm doing, you know, that first bulk rise fermentation overnight while I'm sleeping, and then the next morning I can get up and bake. So right now I don't have any plans for this discard, so I'm gonna feed it to the pigs. They absolutely love it. So if you have animals too and you don't want to bake anything with your discard, you can feed it to your animals. It's totally safe. So typically I like to have like 50 grams of starter left, and then feeding 50 of the flour, 50 of the water. I have a little bit more here because I'm wanting to make more of the recipe that I've used in the past, and so I'm just gonna account for more, and I might add like 60 grams of flour and 60 grams of water. I do have a scale. It makes it a lot easier when you're working in grams, so you don't have to eyeball or figure out how to calculate it to pounds and ounces. Alright, and that is it. So I will leave Otis on the counter to rise and become active, and then I'll just start my day. I know so many people have been curious about sourdough, and they're just intimidated to get started. And I can tell you firsthand, it is a learning curve, but it's the best decision I've ever made. Knowing how to bake bread and then make healthy bread. And also too, it's not just like making a daily loaf, right? There's so many different ways you can use the sourdough to bake really any of your starch needs like that. that I really, really like that. You can use whole wheat flour, you can use rye flour, you can use bread flour, you can just make anything you could think of. So anytime we would need to go to the store to buy something bread-wise, hamburger buns, rolls, something like that, I'm just making it with our starter, and it's been fun because it gets my hands, you know, dirty in the kitchen. And then the kids, surprisingly, really love helping me with it too. So it's not near as scary as you think it is, guys. You just gotta jump in and just do it. Check out these sweet little volunteer sunflowers right here at the garden gate. You've got the morning glory taking over like crazy. It's like taking over down there. It's back behind the glass greenhouse like it does every year. It covers, which is nice for privacy, but it also is really invasive for anything else. But these are super sweet. They match my yellow door perfectly. We've got our dahlias really starting to show out, which we knew they would do better when it cooled off some, but look at that. That's stunning. I think this one might be a favorite too. Take some of those inside. Hi Tito, what you doing? This is called the HS Date. Like this little single petal dahlia. It is also really, really pretty. I got some of these fun ones over here. So if you all remember, the dahlias were one of our experimental crops. So I allow myself a few of those every year. And this year I knew I really wanted to emphasize on the dahlia, but not so much for selling the flower. One, we don't have any local farmers who sell dahlia blooms, so I did know that there was an opportunity for revenue there and for growth, but my main concern was growing them for the tubers, because you can ship the tubers out nationwide. It's a massive, massive deal, and I wanted to really build up my own collection. So I did have quite a bit of investment in these dahlias, so I've been babying them quite a bit. We've got two 48-foot long beds here. They are stunning. They are a bit finicky. You have to trellis them often. You have to make sure that their water needs are met. You have to make sure that you're pinching them. So they're a bit more hands-on than, say, the zinnia or maybe some basil or celosia. But I would certainly argue that the reward is going to be greater if I can, you know, at least double my dahlia tuber collection for next year, and then potentially in a few years sell some of them. That would really kind of be ideal for me. And also just look at them. Some of them are super, super fragrant. Some of them are semi-fragrant. Like I would say this one has like a sweet note, but doesn't like really hit you in the face like a marigold does. But they certainly are really pretty. And there is just something about when you walk into the garden, the first thing you see are these dahlias. They have brought me a lot of joy, and I do think just kind of narrowing down what it is that I'm wanting to focus on this year is going to be a big deal. And so knowing that I've got a few tweaks to figure out when it comes to growing the dahlias, I haven't quite, I certainly haven't mastered them, and I haven't even quite figured out all their needs. But if you have been thinking about growing the dahlia and you've not had success, maybe try planting them midsummer to where you're harvesting in the fall before the frost, and then you can dig up the tubers before the winter. Because I know several people in my growing zone or similar climates who have tried to grow the dahlias and they just weren't successful. And then when they tried to grow them in the cooler months, they had a lot better success. But I do think it's so fun too, the whole plant, right? Like, what are you doing in my bed? Get out! Tito, get out! You guys, I know so many people who are like, why do you have cats in your garden? Trust me, if I didn't have Tito in my garden, I would have another cat. We have got stray cats here like crazy. When we moved on our farm, we had a stray cat come and have babies. We got rid of all those babies, but we kept one, and then Mama left. And our plan was just to get her fixed because apparently she'd been around here for a while. And so we'd gotten really attached to one of the cats. We named him Peter. He was so sweet. And one day Peter left. And then Mama comes back to our neighbor. She's pregnant again. And we were like, hey, you know, can you tell us when she's done nursing? Like, we want to take her and have her fixed. And like, no, we want to keep her. We're going to have her fixed. Okay, cool. I came home the other day and this cat, I kid you not, is sitting on my front porch, pregnant as can be. We have such a massive stray cat problem because we live in the country and everyone just dumps their cats. And so I'm hoping she has her babies here. Nathan and I can take her and go get her fixed. We cannot have any more babies. But I've tried to keep Tito and the other cats out of the garden, and it doesn't work very well. Thankfully, he only likes to stay in the flower beds. So it's not things that we're eating. If we were, I would probably be a lot more diligent on trying to like keep him out of the beds better. So I will be ripping out most of this bed soon. So we had our basil that we were using for fillers. We have our celosia, which is going to seed. So I'll probably save some of those. We've got our zinnias that are dying off. I have also been asked, how do you save seeds from zinnias? So easy. So you wait until the seed has dried on the plant, which is how I prefer to do it. Now, there's a couple different ways. So for me, I absolutely love cross-pollinated zinnias. I have gotten some of the most unique colors and textures. And so for me, I don't ensure that these aren't crossed at all. So I'm never selling the seeds. You know, these are just things that I'm replanting in my own garden. And so if that's how you are, you're just wanting to save the seeds to sow them yourself on your farm, you can just wait until the zinnia dries completely, like I just showed you, and it'll look, very, very similar to this. And then what you do is when you start to pull back all these petals, you can see, I'll stick these in my pocket. You can see what's left here are all of these zinnia seeds. So you'll have to filter through because some of it is just like the petals, but you can tell, especially if you planted zinnias, you know what the seed looks like. So let me get rid of some of the excess here. And so then right here, you've got these zinnia seeds, and I'll just go through, and what I do is I throw them in a baggie and I label raised bed zinnia mix. And so most of these were all crosses. All of the zinnias that I planted by the glass greenhouse were all crosses. Now, if you want to make sure that you're getting the specific variety of the seed that you bought, they're like these mesh party bags you can go and put over them before they're fully bloomed out, and you can ensure that it's not being cross-pollinated by something. So that's another way to do it. And one fun thing that I did this last fall here on this farm, and I've done this for several years on my old farm, is I'll just take the whole pod. If I know I want like flowers, say I'd go out into, you know, the cottage garden, and I would just take this and I would crinkle it and just spread it out over a massive area, and trust me, they will come back. There is a sweet spot of zinnias that come back right back there, and it is where my sweet friend Jessica planted them, and I leave them because it's really sweet, a reminder of her. Speaking of Jess though, her and I did a Growing Gardeners course maybe 2 years ago. We shot it and recorded it when she lived here and I lived at my own farm, and it is a course jam-packed of everything you need to know to get started as a beginner gardener. We've got printable PDFs. We have 6 podcasts that we recorded that were so much fun, and we're talking about starting seeds, companion planting, soil, building compost bins, knowing your frost dates, when to plant out. Like, we really just kind of covered everything for the beginner. The month of August, we are doing a last chance sale. We've got it discounted down to $49, which is the cheapest it ever has been, because we're actually going to discontinue that course. Now, if you do purchase it, you will have access to it for a lifetime, or if you've already purchased the course, you will have access to it for a lifetime. We're just not making it after August, like the end of August. We're not going to let anyone else purchase it and continue to take it. mainly because our farms have changed and our styles of gardening have changed, which is something we actually talk about in the course often, is like how you start gardening is not how you're going to end up gardening. And that's the cool thing about the garden, is that we can all kind of evolve and grow together as we are growing our knowledge. And so it is discounted. I'll put a link down here if you want to check it out. Now's your time. But check out, holy cow, so much okra, you guys. The garden's a little wild, and it always is in August. Anyone who tells you their August garden isn't wild, I'm telling you a story. August garden's always wild, and I love it because it's like you just let it go wild for a little bit, right? Like, I know the fall garden's coming. I know I'm gonna have to clean out things, and I'm gonna have to get Nathan in here to weed eat. Like, we're gonna have to do maintenance. But right now, she just gets to be wild for a minute. And I get to be okay with that. And I love it. Look at this massive okra. So this is probably a little too big. We went out of town for a couple days. And so, of course, the okra just like takes off. So I'm going to come out here before the rain, especially if I know it's going to rain for the next few days, and harvest all of this. That way I can preserve it. Until then, I can harvest the big ones, get a bucket, and take it to the pigs. I have found too, it's so funny, pigs can be snooty sometimes. My pigs do not like my cucumbers, but they love my tomatoes. And so I was out there the other day and I'm like, you do not get to discriminate on my food that I worked so hard to grow to feed you. But I'll tell you, they will. I have been checking the beans too. You guys know I've been having some issues with them actually producing. And I've gotten a handful, but I don't know, I'm curious if I've got any more setting. Let's go look. Speaking of volunteer plants that your friends left, this bed will always be the basil bed. Thank you, Jessica Sowards. It is a sweet little reminder. So we've got, this is like a lemon basil, and then over here we have the Genovese basil, which quite a bit of this. I'm going to actually be preserving a bit of this, and I have been preserving it. And so this is fun. She told me to. She's like, you will always have basil, and you will always have curly mint. And I will tell you, she's a woman of her word. Well, hey, little guy. What you doing? You sure are pretty. I hear bees buzzing all around. So still, I mean, lots of blooms, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of beans, which is kind of sad because the reality is I may have to just rip all these out. Oh, there's a little guy. Hello. I don't know, it's so hard. So hard to make the call. Here's another little guy. Okay, so maybe they are starting to put on. Maybe I'll leave them. But they certainly are just stunning. Look at this. This is probably my favorite part of the garden right now. When you garden, you'll have those spaces that you gravitate to. And you don't want to pick favorites, right? Like, I don't want to pick favorites. I want to love every part of my garden. But it never fails. Every season, there's that one spot that I'm like, oh, yep. You took the gold medal this time. And although this stinking bean wall did not produce hardly anything, it is my favorite place because look at it. It's like what dreams are made of. It's so stunning. And I've always grown beans on an arched trellis. And these are just 2 cattle panels. And there's a bit of a space in between them. And then we've got T-posts set every few feet. And I think I want to replicate this again. Next year when we start to flip beds and we're like putting things in different places, I think this would be really pretty at the front of the garden, and it kind of creates this nice little barrier to from the road to us. So the other day I saw my first cuckoozy squash, which I have planted a long time ago. It is the only reason why I haven't ripped all of these squash off the trellises, because they are dying. They've been infested with squash bugs, but I've been holding on because I really wanted to grow the squash. So you can see it's kind of crazy. It's a little wayward out here. Hi, Millie. How are you doing? So here we have it. Here is the Cuckoozy squash. Is that not wild? This one is massive. Truthfully, I'm not even real sure when you're supposed to harvest this thing, but holy cow. I think it is supposed to be a bit yellow, and this is certainly not yellow. And even when I touch it, it's super tender and soft. So I don't know, these plants are not gonna, I mean, you can see where there's stuff dying in here, so it may just be where I have to harvest these two and just cut my losses, but at least I can try it. But this was one of those that I was super excited to grow, and at least I got a couple of them, and I'll know next time. I don't know, for me, squash is just something, get out of the jungle. Squash is just something that I will grow winter squash, but I think I am kind of overgrowing summer squash. Next year I will try the tromboncino again, but what I may do is put an arch trellis out in the in-ground garden. That way if it does, you know, get run over with pests, which I haven't had a lot of squash bug issues with the tromboncino, but if I did, you know, at least it's not kind of invading everything else in the garden. So it's wild, but not near as dreamy as I thought. And I think that that is something too this year. I have really missed the really just kind of the romantic side of the garden. And we do a lot of high production here. We grow a lot in our high tunnel, and that will always just be this production driven thing, right? But I do think that there are a few ways I can add a bit more beauty out here into the raised beds. I'm gonna be adding a few more arch trellises. I'm gonna be adding a few more chairs because I do feel like I've missed that. And at the end of the day, we can grow food and that can be fine and dandy, but if we're not creating a space we wanna come back to, we're gonna be less than motivated to come out here and put the work in required. And I think that that's something I've taught a lot, you know, over the last few years, like create a space you want to come to, create a space you want to come to. But I do feel like I slightly missed that myself this year. And so there is that fine balance between being productive and creating a place that's a sanctuary. And that is what I refer to my garden as. This is my sanctuary. It's a place of refuge, of peace, of just like, it gives me that jolt of energy, you know, to just keep going on the hard days. And so if it does all of that for me, it's the least I can do to pour back into her the way she deserves. And so I am so excited for this new season, and she's a little wild right now. She is certainly a little wild right now, but there's gonna be a lot of beauty in here pretty soon. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, but I am about to get wet by the look of the sky right now, so I'm gonna make a mad dash in the house. I hope you guys are enjoying your coffee. Don't forget the Growing Gardener course. There'll be a link down below if you wanna sign up and kind of join us for this last chance sale. But thank you guys. I'll talk to you soon.